Hello, this is Frank Simon with the rest of the news, and our special guest today is Rich Pearson. And Rich, we appreciate you coming on. You're the whole program today.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Rich had some important information to tell us about the Louisville Police Department.
Correct. Yes.
Some problems that are going on there even now as we're speaking?
As we're speaking, yes, these problems are still occurring.
Really? We need to try to correct some of these if possible.
We really do, because the problems that are going on currently with the Louisville Metro Police Department directly impact public safety. They're responsible to a large degree with all of these homicides that we keep seeing in our town and all the other types of violent crime and property crime. These issues really need to be addressed and addressed soon.
Chief Conrad is involved in all of these problems. Is that right?
In my opinion, he's the source of the problems.
Can you tell us how that is?
Well, right now, I retired from the police department as a lieutenant in 2015. I still have many friends on the police department that I talk to all the time. What I'm hearing from active members of the police department today is that the police department across the board, the officers are afraid to do their work. They're not afraid of the criminal element because they knew there was going to be danger there. That's what they signed on for. What they're afraid of is the chief of police. They're afraid of retaliation. And he has shown himself to be active in retaliation. As a matter of fact, he just lost a whistleblower lawsuit with one of his lieutenants, Jimmy Harper, just a few weeks ago. And that was a retaliation whistleblower case. And the jury ruled that Chief Conrad had retaliated against that officer. So it's documented in court. Chief Conrad does retaliate against anybody that goes against him in any way.
Boy, that's really something, isn't it? And that affects the whole police department.
Right. And what I'm saying now is an opinion. This last one with Jimmy Harper, this is court documented. But what I'm hearing from my friends that are still in the police department is that they are afraid if any situation comes up that might make the chief look bad or put him on a hot seat or make him have to answer any questions from the media, he would just automatically retaliate against the officer or discipline that officer unnecessarily or improperly. And if the officer tries to defend himself, then he gets what we call blacklisted, meaning his prospects for promotion go away. If he or she wants to go to a specialized unit like homicide or sex crimes or SWAT or anything like that, then those chances just go away because the chief lets his command staff know that this person is not to be promoted or dealt with in any way. That's why and how he's able to keep such tight control of the police department.
Right. And there have been some examples of what that actually happened. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, there was an incident back in 2012 before I retired. Myself and another detective, when I was posted in the Metro Narcotics Unit, another detective by the name of Baron Morgan, came into some information about a guy who had committed a murder. This person had confessed in full graphic detail to the homicide that he had committed several years earlier. He even kind of chuckled and said that he felt bad about it because there's a lady sitting in prison for it when she wasn't guilty. So that really got Detective Morgan's attention. And he started and continued talking to this guy. He gave him all the details of a murder that he committed against a guy named Deanie Breeden several years before that. I think it was in Spencer County. And he said there was a woman named Susan King sitting in prison for that murder unjustly. So Barron, since he worked for me, he contacted me, and I knew we were going to go forward with it because as police officers, the most horrible concept that we can envision is an innocent person sitting in prison. Guilty people get off all the time. That's just the nature of the beast. But when you know about an innocent person who's sitting in a prison cell, you've got to act on it. If you're any type of police officer, if you're any type of human being, you have to act on that. So we did. And we went through all the proper channels. I contacted the police legal advisor, contacted my chain of command. They gave us instructions on what to do. And they gave us the go-ahead to contact the Kentucky Innocence Project, give them the information we had so that they could help this woman who was unjustly in prison. Found out that there was some inappropriate things done by the Kentucky State Police to get this woman convicted of this murder. And when those facts started to come to light, obviously that put a very negative tone on the Kentucky State Police Department. And right after that, all kinds of bad things started happening to myself and to Barron. We started getting terrible performance evaluations, constantly in trouble for one thing or another. And we couldn't figure out what was going on until we realized subsequently that our chief, Chief Conrad, was best friends with the then commissioner of the Kentucky State Police, Rodney Brewer. There was communication between the two of them about this issue, trying to make us be quiet and stop what we were doing. And that's why all these negative things started to happen to myself and Barron. Well, we were actually able to go down to Spencer County and testify in a hearing down there, got some things done and helped her get out of prison. And she's currently free. She's not living very well right now, but she is out of prison, and we were happy to help with that. But at the time, The commander of the Metro Narcotics Unit was a guy named Major Jimmy Harper, and publicized heavily in the news here lately. About 3 weeks ago or something like that, he had to file a whistleblower lawsuit because of the same set of circumstances. He was a commander of the Metro Narcotics Unit when the Susan King incident happened, and he got blacklisted as well. At the time, Baron Morgan, who was the most productive detective in Metro Narcotics by far, was kicked out of the unit with 18 years of service. He was kicked out of the unit and put back in patrol on the midnight shift as a senior detective.
So that's like a punishment.
That's absolutely a punishment. You go from one of the premier units in the police department back to an entry-level position, basically. So that's what happened to Barron, and he had to file a whistleblower lawsuit. The city settled out of court with him. I think they gave him $450,000. Subsequently, later on, I had to file the same type of whistleblower lawsuit. The jury went against me in the court case because I was never demoted or fired or anything like that. But the same set of circumstances that happened to Barron happened to me, and subsequent to that, I too was kicked out of Metro Narcotics with 20 years of service on and put back in uniform on the midnight shift as a 20-year lieutenant. Later on, they kicked Major Harper out of the unit at the same time and put him in the patrol division against his will. They started moving him all over the place, and then they recently demoted him, and he had to file a whistleblower lawsuit as well because this all stems from the same incident back in 2012 with the Susan King matter. He recently won his lawsuit in court, and he was awarded $300,000. So Chief Conrad is costing the city a lot of money unnecessarily. And at the same time, there are several other officers who have filed internal lawsuits against Chief Conrad. I know of another female lieutenant who's got a lawsuit pending. A couple of officers just got lawsuits resolved not too long ago. I think there's several officers who've come together for a class action type lawsuit that's still pending. He has gotten a ton of internal lawsuits filed against him, and that just goes to show his character. In addition to that, everyone who seems to know anything about how Chief Conrad runs the police department or handles his affairs is unsatisfied. The FOP for the Louisville Metro Police Department filed a vote of no confidence against Chief Conrad, which is a symbolic vote. It doesn't carry any actual weight, but it's the police department's way of saying, hey, we don't agree with what you're doing. We don't agree with how you're running the police department. We don't have any confidence in your capabilities to run the police department effectively or efficiently. And then subsequent to that, the Louisville Metro Council had a vote of no confidence against Chief Conrad. And I have never heard of that happening anywhere in the country, that a city council would have a vote of no confidence against the chief of police. But for some odd reason, Mayor Fisher seems to want to ride that pony. Conrad is his guy, and he's defending him, even though he knows that he's harming the police department, he's harming public safety. You got this police explorer scandal that's still ongoing, and every time you look in the news, you see that more layers have been peeled back, more information has come to light about a cover-up, and people in the police department didn't have the information to go forward with it or make it public, but we always felt like there was a cover-up. We felt strongly that there was a cover-up going on with that, and now you're starting to see proof coming out, the proof that we knew was there, but was being held captive by Chief Conrad. And these things are starting to come out in courtroom cases and subpoenas and open records requests, and these layers are starting to get peeled back. People are starting to see that cover-up actually did take place. I think the worst is still yet to come. I think the worst information has still not yet been revealed. And when it comes out, it's going to be one of these bombshell type revelations that you keep hearing in the news. There are a lot of things that the Chief Conrad has dropped the ball on, and he really needs to be replaced. And I was happy to see that the current mayoral candidate who's going up against Greg Fisher in the November election, Angela Leet, has stated publicly and repeatedly that if she's elected her first day on the job, Chief Conrad will be removed as the chief of police.
Really?
Yeah.
That would solve a lot of these problems.
It would. It would take the handcuffs off the police department, so to speak, and allow them to get back to work and allow them to get back to doing what they're supposed to be doing. I need to say the men and the women of LMPD work hard. They do the best job they can. They do a difficult and dangerous job, and they do it as best as they are allowed to right now. But they're not getting any help from the chief's office. As a matter of fact, they're being held back and stifled by the chief's office. They know what to do. They're well-trained, they're smart, they're brave, they're energetic, they're enthusiastic. Even before I retired, I had young officers coming to me saying, Lieutenant, I know what's going on my beat. I see these guys out here, they're doing this and they're doing that, and they're breaking the law, and I want to approach them, but I'm afraid that if I do, and eventually something's going to go sideways, there's going to be a fight, there's going to be a scuffle, somebody's going to file a complaint, and financially I just can't afford to get fired or suspended. I've got a young family at home, I've got children, I've got a mortgage, and those things made sense to me, and I knew what they were saying was logical because they were seeing other officers who were doing nothing more than trying to do their jobs get disciplined up to and including termination. And the young officers that worked for me just didn't want to take that chance.
Wow, that's really something that the mayor would keep backing that kind of chief of police in spite of all of these problems, the no confidence vote, all of these lawsuits that were lost for the city, and all of this, and still he wouldn't correct the situation by whatever, get a new chief of police or something.
The buck stops with the mayor as far as responsibility for the well-being of the city. It's financial well-being, it's safety and security well-being, great recreational well-being. The buck stops with the mayor. And if the mayor is allowing one of his department heads, and that being the chief of police, to do something, anything that endangers the welfare of the city, it's the mayor's responsibility. It's his sworn duty to take corrective action, safeguard the safety of the city. And he's not doing that right now. He's allowing, for whatever reason, this guy who we know is not getting the job done, who's actually counterproductive to policing in this town, to remain in office. And that is hurting every single one of us, no matter what end of town you live in. That's hurting you. That's hurting us badly.
Because if you do something he doesn't like, he's going to
off with your head,
discipline you in some unfair way.
And as I said, when he does these things, most officers just lay down and take it because they don't want to get into this back and forth with the chief of police because they know they're going to lose. So they just allow him to do whatever it is he wants to do. He violates his own rules and his own policies with blatant disregard. And when he does something wrong to an officer, they usually just lay down and take it. But whenever you have an officer who says, no, chief, this isn't right, I followed the rules and I want things to be done the right way, then that officer gets blacklisted and his career goes straight off a cliff. And it's terrible.
Some of these guys were able to file a whistleblower suit and get compensated for their unfair punishment that they went through.
And these large lawsuits that he's losing, that the city settled out of court with Baron Morgan for $450,000. That's almost $500,000 out of the city budget. The chief doesn't care. It's not his money. The court actually ruled in favor of Jimmy Harper in his whistleblower lawsuit, which means they agree that the chief retaliated against him. Now, that's a Class A misdemeanor. It's important to understand violating the Whistleblower Act is not just some administrative wrongdoing. It is an actual crime. It is a crime to violate the Whistleblower Act. It's a Class A misdemeanor.
Wow.
The chief committed a crime.
Yeah.
The jury agreed that the chief committed a crime, but I think the statute of limitations on it has passed, and even if it hadn't, you got to understand that the county attorney's office is the lawyer, so to speak, for the police department. So is the lawyer for the police department going to go after the chief of police? I don't think so. So there's a lot of things going on in city government right now that aren't right, that are counterproductive to fairness and to the public good. And they need to be exposed. People need to know about them. And the problem with people getting this information is that, especially as it relates to the police department, all the information that looks bad for the chief, he just makes sure nobody says anything about it. He has the information locked in a drawer somewhere. He confiscates it and nobody gets to see that information. Therefore, nobody ever knows about it outside the police department.
And really, the media hasn't really exposed this. In other words, what you're saying now is kind of the first time the public has ever heard this.
Well, it's starting to come out. There have been some investigative reports. I think Wave 3 has done some investigative reports. WHAS has done some investigative reports. And as I said, the layers are starting to get peeled back, especially with this Explorer scandal that's going on. Explosive, very public. People in this town don't like the idea of police officers raping their kids. And that's what was going on. And that's what's going to be exposed. And you have to ask yourself, Kenny Betts was one of the officers that was deeply involved in this. You have to ask yourself, why was he not fired and prosecuted years ago when all this stuff was happening? Well, the chief of police, and this is all public information, not speaking opinion on this at all, this is all public information. The chief of police, when allowed Kenny Betts to resign, he allowed him to resign, which means technically he could have gone and become a police officer somewhere else. He didn't prosecute him for any of the information he had as it relates to inappropriate contact with those minors and people under his charge in the Explorer program. Now, Chief Conrad has been a police officer over 30 years. He's been a chief of police around 10 years. The guy is very intelligent. He has a master's degree. So it is implausible for him to say he didn't understand or didn't know that Kenny Betts should have been prosecuted. How does a career police officer have information that a grown man is having inappropriate sexual contact with a minor and he doesn't understand he's supposed to initiate prosecution? It insults the intelligence of the public for him to try to make that claim, but that's what he has done. It's just ridiculous to me that these people are still in power.
Well, and the other thing is the mayor just winks at the whole thing or looks the other way or
He
something.
turns a blind eye. I don't want to speak to this too much because the facts of the case haven't been exposed yet, but I believe that as more layers of this Explorer scandal are revealed, the mayor's involvement in this will be discovered, that he's more deeply involved than he has let on. I think that will come to light.
We really appreciate you informing us and the public about what's going on in the police department and the mayor's office.
Mm-hmm. We could do a whole series on the things that are going on inside the police department alone that should be changed. And as I said before, if Angela Lee is elected mayor, she has publicly vowed to correct these problems. We know the road that Mayor Fisher has taken us down. Yeah. Triple-digit homicides year after year. The West End has no grocery stores, no pharmacies, no retail stores, nothing of this nature. We're losing businesses left and right. No new businesses are coming in town. So we know the road that Mayor Fisher is taking us down. And if you're satisfied with that, by all means, vote for Mayor Fisher. But if you're not satisfied with that and you'd like to take another road and see where this town can actually go and how good things can actually be, I suggest you vote your conscience.
What is it, November 6th or so?
November 6th or 7th, I believe, yeah.
This is quite a lot of information that has never been revealed before. I just don't understand. Why do you think the media isn't on top of all of this?
Because they don't have the information that they need to go forward with it. Because, as I said, the chief safeguards all this information and holds everything tight to the vest. And I just want to say this. I keep hearing people say, we shouldn't be so hard on Chief Conrad. He's just one man. He can't impact crime overall in the city. He's just one man. But I disagree with that. Because he is one man who's in charge of the police department. The police department can impact crime in this city. That's its job. That is its solemn duty. And if he has single-handedly handicapped and handcuffed and shackled the police department, then yes, one man can and has impacted crime citywide. And that's what Chief Conrad has done. I have absolutely no idea why he's still here. As I said before, when the jury ruled against him in this last whistleblower case, they adjudicated that, in essence, he had committed a Class A misdemeanor. Now,
you're talking about Conrad now.
Talking about Chief Conrad. So how can you be that type of chief of police where you're actually committing crimes yourself and remain the chief of police and remain the person who sits in judgment of other police officers' actions?
I got an article off the internet this morning about Susan King, and she's the lady that got convicted of murdering somebody. Then the real murderer confessed to it and said that he had murdered this individual, yet they wouldn't let this lady go.
Again, that's boggles my mind.
Yeah.
Because we had the killer, had him. He actually told my detective, I killed this guy. I've killed a lot of people, and I'll confess to all of them if you help my brother with some narcotics case that he had. So we were anxious to go forward with that. And he even went so far as to say, just so you know that I'm not whistling Dixie, that I actually know what I'm talking about, I will give you the first guy that I killed. I'll tell you all about it. And that's that case I was telling you about, Deanie Breeden. He gave every detail, what the dead guy had in his pockets, where he dumped him, how he wrapped him up, how he shot him, things that only the killer could know. He gave us all those details. And he said, if you help my brother with his narcotics case, and I think it was in Arkansas, I'll tell you about all these other people that I've killed. And he said he had killed 20 to 25 people. And we had him that night because he had tried to kill the informant of my detective, Baron Morgan. So we had him. We could have prosecuted him then. But because of all this and what we believe that Chief Conrad's involvement was, not only did he not get prosecuted for the homicide he confessed to, he didn't get prosecuted for the major assault that he had committed here in Louisville that we had him dead to right on. And right now, that man, his name is Richard Jarrell, confessed serial killer, is walking free amongst us.
Oh my goodness.
He's walking free because we weren't allowed to prosecute him.
And that was Conrad's fault.
That tracks directly back to Chief Conrad.
And then the mayor again is...
He's backing him, man. I don't understand.
Time for a change, I would say.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Now, in this article, they talk with this lady. She weighs about 100 pounds, has only got one leg, and they said that she picked this 200-pound policeman up and threw him over the railing into the river.
Well, he wasn't a policeman. He was her on-again, off-again boyfriend, but she actually weighed 97 pounds. She had a catastrophic amputation of her right leg, meaning it was amputated so high up toward her hip that she couldn't wear a prosthetic leg. To move from point A to point B, she had to either use two crutches, not one, but two, or be in a wheelchair. The state police said that she shot and killed a man who was roughly 200 pounds, wrapped his dead body in guitar cord, lifted him up and carried him out to her car, put him in the trunk of her car, drove him to a bridge, lifted him out of the trunk of the car, and tossed him over the railing into the river with one leg.
And 100 pounds.
And 100 pounds.
Less than 100.
And what the state detective didn't bother to tell the grand jury in that case was that she had only one leg, and two, he told the grand jury that he had ballistically matched bullets from her gun, a gun that she used to own, to bullets that were pulled from the deceased body. And we have information from the state police crime lab that that was not so. Those bullets were never matched. So he actually lied to the grand jury. He deleted information about her leg that would have kept the grand jury from indicting her, and he actually lied to them about the gun and the ballistics and the bullet to get her indicted. And off she goes to prison. They made her a deal. We'll use the power of the state against you and get you put in prison for life, or you plead guilty and we'll recommend 10 years. And she said in the news she was just outgunned and outsmarted. And she took a plea deal, what they call an Alford plea, and off to prison she went.
Now, again, that was Conrad involvement in that. I mean, he should have.
He wasn't involved in the initial cover-up. He was in no way involved in the murder of Amy Breeden or the Susan King case. He wasn't involved in that. Years and years later, when we actually found the person that committed the murder, then Conrad's involvement comes into play.
Because they should have said, oh, this guy confessed to the murder, so you can let that woman go.
And that's what myself and Detective Morgan did. We were subpoenaed to go to a hearing in Spencer County, I believe, and by the Innocence Project. And we went down there and we just told the truth. We told what we knew, what we saw. We told what this man, Richard Jarrell, had said, and we testified to that. And she was subsequently released from prison. But there was no help from Louisville Metro Police. As a matter of fact, one of the majors at that time actually called the state police and apologized to them for our involvement, myself and Baron Morgan's involvement in meddling in their case. If it's meddling to help an innocent woman get out of prison, then I'm guilty. I'm guilty. But that's, as a reputable police officer, you cannot have that kind of information and sit on it. You absolutely cannot. And as a chief of police, you should be doing everything in your power to help detectives and help officers actually act in the best interests of justice. It's going to be a criminal justice system if we're not acting in the best interest of justice.
Right.
And that's not what's going on right now with Chief Conrad.
The mayor, Fisher, didn't discipline the chief of police.
No, he didn't discipline him. As far as we know, there was nothing. And Chief Conrad just keeps moving forward right along and making absolutely incredibly bad decisions, like he disbanded the district flex platoons. What that is, the city is broken into 8 police districts, and each district is commanded by a police major. When complaints come in from citizens of each of these districts, maybe somebody calls in and says, hey, Johnny at the end of the street is selling dope, and I'd like you to do something about that. Well, the uniformed officers can't really address that problem because you can see them coming from a mile away, right? So you need plainclothes officers in unmarked cars to do surveillance and to do that kind of sneaky work that needs to be done in a lot of these cases. When there's a string of burglaries, you call for the flex platoon to go and investigate it because they can flex their hours to be available whenever the crime is occurring. And as long as I was on the police department, which was 22 years and long before then, we had flex platoons on the police department. Every district commander had a flex platoon at their disposal to actually address crime issues. And Chief Conrad comes along and says, we're going to get rid of flex platoons. Well, who's going to go after the street level incidents that are going on when people call in and say, hey, can you help me with this? Or can you help me with that? There's prostitutes working out in the alley, or this is going on, or that's going on. The uniformed officers really and truly don't have time to address those things. One, because they're in uniform, you can see them coming. And two, they're busy answering calls for service. Sometimes they have calls stacked up that they're trying to take care of. So you absolutely need a flex platoon. And for any, that just shows to me, in my opinion, the chief's incompetence. Because when you get rid of those units of that type, you leave the districts naked. You leave them, you leave them unprotected, so to speak, in that regard. And again, the men and women of the police department do their work as best they can. They're brave, they're smart, they're well trained. They go out and they do the work, but they can only do what they're allowed to do. And Chief Conrad doesn't allow them to do all the things that they should be doing.
And then Mayor Fisher doesn't try to correct the situation.
No, it would seem to me that as a mayor, if the chief did something like get rid of the flex platoons, he would say, hey, wait a minute, the people need those. And I know for a fact that several of the city councilmen went to the mayor and said, hey, this is a problem. We need those flex platoons. What is the chief doing? We need you to help us out with this. And they even made their case to him about why they're needed and how they're needed and what they actually do on a day-to-day basis. And the mayor basically slammed his fist on the desk, said he had heard enough, and overruled them.
Oh, brother. Okay, well, we're running out of time. Lieutenant Rich Pearson is no longer lieutenant.
Yeah, I retired 2015.
You sure gave us an earful today about what's going on in the police department and who's responsible. So we're going to have to call it quits. God bless you, and tune in again next week for the rest of the news. Hi, I'm Dr. Frank Simon. I'm an allergist and family doctor, board certified in both allergy and internal medicine. I specialize in allergy, headaches, sinus, hives, cough, asthma, hypertension, and diabetes. We're located at 1404 Browns Lane near Norton Suburban Hospital. Our phone number is 895-5088. We can see you tomorrow. They say most of the drugs in America come through the Mexican border.
Well, that's true. They bring it through. They're coming out of all the way from Iran over to Venezuela, from Venezuela to Central America, all the way up. They've got a pipeline operating for a long time, and it includes places like Kentucky. That started with our marijuana that we grazed in Kentucky. It was the number one quality marijuana in America. It was in big demand. The cartels found out about that. They came in with an inferior grade of marijuana from Mexico and got the local people to blend it with theirs and to make it double their profit. And this is how they got into the thing, and now they're coming in here with all the narcotics from heroin on down.
And keeping the price down so anybody can get all the drugs they want.
And I had a friend in the police department that told me one time that the insidious part of this is there are a lot of prominent American citizens in Kentucky that are financing these programs for the pure profit of it. And there's the fact, never touch the drugs. There's no illegal way to attack them. So this is the one thing that they've been profiting from, so they don't want to get rid of it.
And then, of course, there was a lady that just got murdered in the last couple of weeks from illegal immigrants coming in.
And this is the thing going on. And it's not only the Latin people, it's others. The head of the Border Patrols mentioned that in the last year, that people from 141 different countries were coming in. And there was just recently 100 Muslims from the central part of Asia tried to come in. They were able to stop. But they will admit that they stop a very small percentage of the total number of people that are coming across our borders.
Now, the other thing is this Kavanaugh. If we can get Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court, then we've got a chance for freedom and Constitution in our country.
To make sure that every part of the Constitution is lived.
They hate that. And then, of course, they want to confiscate all the guns, like Hitler did.
And it was the same thing that Russians did when they came into the Eastern Zone, is to confiscate the weapons first so that you cannot rebel against them.
Well, that's what the Democrat platform is. Get your guns and raise the taxes, impeach Trump, and, of course, they want to support the Muslim Palestinians over Israel.
Exactly.